This is 1017 CHLY.
Welcome to Wellness Wednesday and the Chronic Wellness Radio Show. We are coming to you live from the CHLY studios in downtown Nanaimo, BC, where the sun is shining and the people are smiling. Each and every Wednesday at this time, we are bringing you conversations around health, wellness, and how to live your very best life. My name is Sandra Sova, and Chronic Wellness is not just the name of the show, it's a way to approach your life. Chronic, by definition, means anything that is ongoing and constantly reoccurring. And isn't ongoing and constantly reoccurring wellness something that we are all seeking? I have two amazing guests on the program today that I cannot wait for you to meet them. You know, I've been thinking lately, is it just me? Or are you also finding that there are a lot more positive choices and voices of encouragement, whether we're out in the world, in our communities, or even when we're scrolling through our social media feeds? As a beautiful contrast to all that is negative in the world, there seems to be more and more people that are looking inward for inspiration and then pouring outward with light and positivity into the world. I can feel it, I love it, and we need so much more of it. You know, there are so many people, women in particular, that are taking charge of their lives and stepping into a more confident and better versions of themselves. We have access to so many different ways to support a desire to lead a thriving, healthy, more exciting life, and it's a really exciting time to be alive. My guests today are using their talents, their skills, and their gifts to help one another just do that. And they have a lot to teach us how we also can thrive. I'm so excited to bring you my first guest. So let's get started. All right, joining me now is Pamela Jay, who has a few things to share with us today. Firstly, she has a fascinating story about her own personal wellness journey and how that led her to a unique and inspired way of working with and helping women entrepreneurs. Pamela is known as the Voice Whisperer, and she'll be sharing how she works with women entrepreneurs to break through their stuck points, unlock their natural voice, learn to lead from within to empower others, and to be able to do so without burning themselves out. Pamela is also going to be offering a gift to all of our listeners, a Sacred Heart Voice chakra reading, which we will tell you more about shortly. Hello, Pamela. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited for everyone to hear from you.
Hi, Sandra. It's a pleasure to be with you this day.
Absolutely. Now, as you know, when you and I have had a conversation before, we touched on something that is pretty common, and that is how so many people that are doing work in the area of helping others and healing and wellness have come to that as a result of having come through a significant personal journey. And I just love your story and was wondering if you could share it with us to help people sort of get to know you a little bit better.
Yes, I think that is a fascinating thing. And the longer I'm at this, the more I realize that so many of us have found our way to really what our passion is in life through our hardships. And my story began when I was a farm woman in Indiana with two little boys. I was 38 years old and diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which, as most people know, is an intestinal disorder. Your intestines swell shut, and I was scheduled to have my intestines partially removed. And I knew nothing about, any of this. It was all new to me. I just knew in my heart of hearts that this wasn't the way that I wanted to live my life. And so rather than telling my husband that I was facing this surgery, I went on a walk. And if you know anything about Crohn's disease, that's an effort in itself to even find the strength to walk. But I wandered off, is more like it, to an old stone silo on our farm. And I began to sing, and it was a stone silo. It was open at the top to the stars, and the sound of my voice coming off of that stone felt like warm butter washing over me, and I just felt this enormous peace. And in that moment, I just knew that there must be another way. Back then, doctors weren't saying, how's the stress level in your life? And things like that. They weren't really questioning that. I just had this sense that my meditations were making me even sicker, and there must be a different way to do things. So that's how it all began. And 12 weeks later, I had another colonoscopy, and my befuddled doctors, and yes, there were two opinions, were rather taken aback by how did that happen? Oh, well, so it set me on a life journey to understand what had happened to me, and led me into energy healing work. And here I am at 65 years old, helping many, many women who have found that they too may be blocked in some ways that are detrimental to their health.
Absolutely. And I mean, your story is a really profound example of having that, tapping into what, some people can call stress. It can just be life. It can be anything. It's so individual. But understanding and recognizing how damaging that is to our bodies and our health, there's so much that can be done when we allow our bodies to heal ourselves. And you mentioned, you talked on working through some of those blockages. Tell me more about that.
Well, yes, and I had to kind of giggle in the end that singing became a part of my healing, because I realized that my creative expression had been blocked when I was 19 years old, and gave up a singing career in order to take care of my mother, who became ill. At the same time, my father decided to leave the family. And I had to just put it all on hold, and I didn't sing for 30 years. So, of course, singing would help unblock things and unlock things, that creative flow, that essence of who I am. It has many other benefits that many people benefit from, but I think in particular it was why it spoke to me. This was a part of myself that I was denying for many years, and my soul knew it, and it wasn't having it. So the message came through my body loud and clear.
Mm-hmm. And, I think that is sadly not uncommon, that women in particular maybe put a lid on their passions and don't follow their dreams in a way that because life gets in the way. Would you sort of say that kind of is what people experience?
Well, I think that is true, and I think we certainly mean well, and I think what happens is we are taught, and oftentimes generations before us, I know my own grandmother and my mother, that was what was modeled. You were praised, you were doing the work that you were called to do in the world if you were caring for others, and it became, in a way, kind of a badge of honor that we sort of suddenly took on and said, oh, I'm caring for everyone else, and aren't I wonderful? And so I think that is certainly what I can speak to, and it got me in trouble because it was my identity. Mm-hmm. It was my identity. Yes.
And so then when in doing that, you started to really explore a lot of the healing energy through voice work and empowerment through the use of voice and expression.
I did, and here I was on a 6th generation family farm in Indiana. I knew nothing about energy, and we're back in the early 90s now. And I was in a very conservative farm community, and I actually went to nature, where I spent a lot of time, and began to just watch Mother Nature and how she functioned in the world. And I went, wow, she doesn't resist everything like I've been doing. And I think there's really something to that. I would sit by the river and intuitively bury myself in the sand, on the sandbar. It just felt good to my body. I knew nothing about what they're now calling earthing and grounding and all of these things. But I was listening to my body at a very, very deep level and learning how it worked and being obedient to what I was feeling that my body needed. And it needed green, it needed to relax, it needed to be outside and have fresh air, and most of all, it needed to quiet my busy mind that was keeping me overly involved in juggling so many things, trying to be super mom, helping manage a 1,200-acre farm. It was like, who am I, What is life? What's a mother? What's a wife? I was asking a lot of questions. And so answers began to come through. And for me, it came through in song lyrics and in poetry. And I began being guided to open a learning center for children on another farm across the river, and was taught to garden organically. And I'd never done that before. We were on, again, a conventional farm. Everything was turned on its ear. But what happened was I began following this inner guidance, which did not match the way of the world, and life got easier.
It got easier. And what was the result for your health?
Well, like I said, 12 weeks later, my illness was gone. But it was like all of a sudden, I was thriving. Things were happening in amazing ways. I started this nonprofit learning center, and amazing things would happen. A woman came from Denmark to build Native American teepees in the woods. Now, you can't write that into a 10-year business plan. All kinds of synchronicities began happening that were quite amazing and quite wonderful. I was writing poetry, and a lot of the guidance came in the middle of the night, which was not real convenient when you're a married woman. And I honestly think my husband thought I was having an affair. I was so happy.
Oh, that's hysterical.
And I was writing, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so in love with
right, yeah,
with how I feel, and this is so amazing. And he's like, wait a minute.
You were having an affair with yourself and who your inner, rediscovering who you were really meant to be.
I know.
And what a beautiful thing that is. Where did the transition take from working with the children in that environment to what you're doing today?
All right. Well, great question. I did the Learning Center. I had an 11-year run, and it won many awards. I became a singer-songwriter, and I actually won some national awards and had the chance to be someone who would go out and that didn't feel right to me. It was like, no, I still had a teenager at home as well. So that just wasn't how it was, children clamoring for autographs. It was just not in how I felt like I was to use my gifts. And so after 11 years, and I did end up, my husband and I did divorce. We did it in a friendly way, but I was no longer the woman he married. He wanted me home on the tractors, and I was clearly following another path, and I had to be true to who I was in that. So at that point then, I just felt like I could help women. And I was watching these moms of these kids that were coming to the Learning Center. They were getting as much, if not more, out of nature hiking and quieting their minds and not worrying about what they had to make for dinner or what their other children needed. And I went, these are the people I can serve, and that just felt right in my heart. Mm-hmm. So I opened another learning center, or a retreat center for women, and did that for quite some time. It was actually for, particularly for women who did health and wellness things, ministers, nurses, social workers, all of them, finding that they had so much in common because they were all overgivers and they forgot to take care of themselves. So I created a program. I called it Gracious Receiver. It was something my grandmother said when she was in her 90s and living in a retirement center, didn't have to worry about paying the bills anymore. She paid in advance. And so when someone would come to help her, she says, I guess I'll just be a gracious receiver. And so I love that. And I went, this is what I'm here for. So I did that in Indiana for a bit. And then I had another thing that happened that was really amazing. And that was I had to be true to myself all over again because I began to get quite popular with that and began to experience another bit of temptation to get overly busy again. And I stopped myself dead in my tracks and says, what are you trying to do? You got to go through this again. It's like, I don't think so. I said, what do I need? What do I need more than anything right now? And I remembered my retreating into nature and how much I'd learned there. And I said, I'm going to do something really, really very different than I've ever done. And I left my hometown of 50 years. My parents were doing well at that time, and my children were grown. And I said, between college and getting married, I never had that little window of opportunity where you just kind of get to go off and play and do whatever you want. So I went and I sold most of my belongings, and I took off in my little Jeep Wrangler at 59 years old and went off to the mountains of North Carolina where I could find as much natural beauty as possible and built and lived in a tree house.
Wow.
It was a fantasy I'd always had, and I said, well, I can make that a reality. Now, I didn't know I was going to stay 2.5 years. But it was a magical and amazing time, and I did this deep immersion into that and really listened and learned even more. And I went, my illness taught me some beautiful things. My working in this retreat center and following this organic way of building a business that was successful, I learned some amazing things. And I said, and now I'm back to nature. And what I'm learning, the common thread and all that, Sandra, was that I was learning how to lead in a fundamentally different way, lead my life. We talk about leadership, but it's leading your life in this fundamentally different way that leaves you as a healthy, whole person. And that is, learning to lead from what I call our feminine energies, our being, and a place of groundedness and of, aligned with our soul, or however you want to frame that, however you want to call it. And then it guides and instructs our doing. And that is the masculine energy. So it's this beautiful dance. We need both. And we've had it so backwards. And there's not a great feminine leadership model out there. We're learning it. We're finding it as we go. And I think this is what so many of us are tapping into.
Yes.
But it begins with honoring who we actually are, not who we are trying to be.
Oh my goodness, that's so powerful. And you know what? In listening to your story, congratulations on recognizing that you were building towards that too busy, too much on your plate, and being able to say, no, that's not what I want, and take a step back, because I can see how so many things can just come in and fill up our lives. But when you were really tapping into what you needed, which was nature and the quiet and the peace, to be able to do a reset on that is amazing. And that's what's, continued you down that beautiful path. What was it like living in a treehouse for 2 years?
Oh, so amazing. It's so wonderful. And it was built into, anchored into a mountainside, and then the front part of it was cantilevered out over a creek. So it was 35 feet above a creek. And I had about a 40-foot span of a quartz crystal rock that was exposed on the creek, and I would meditate there. You get in tune with the biorhythms of nature when you live that closely to it. So you literally go to bed when the birds do, and you wake up when the first wren sings her song in the morning. One actually built a nest in an old boot beside the bed and raised her babies within feet of where I was. And so I went into that intentionally wanting to just see how much I could become like nature herself. And I really did, through organic food, and, building the house itself was a lot of work, and I did have some help with that. But it was a beautiful creative process, and I went, I'm not building this treehouse. This treehouse is building me.
Oh, yeah.
And I just knew it. It was a balance of how I could find my center each day and be grounded in that, and then do my doing, but be very aware that I did not overdo,
Yes.
did not push myself. So our feminine energies they pull us, Sandra. I bet you can relate to this. They pull us. And so anytime I would find myself pushing and striving, I would recognize that as that old part of me that would want to try to bust through something or, prove something.
Well,
and
that's
so,
where we would get our recognition, right? By achieving and doing, and like you said before, it was often doing for others, and that's where, where all the the positive reinforcement would come in. I love thinking about it as you describe, as the feminine energy as the being, and the doing as a more masculine energy, and
Right.
helping women to sort of reconnect with and claim back a real power for their feminine energy. And that can really help with a lot of being able to move forward and to find your voice.
Oh, very much so. I want to say, it just occurred to me as you were saying, recognizing that place where you're not giving so much to others, and that you had identified with that part. The trick was to not overcompensate and go the other way and start identifying with the part of myself that was like, oh, I'm doing all this for me now, it's like, and so it was finding that delicate balance in that, because, our ego, its job is to sabotage everything, and it's really good at it. so I had to really watch that I didn't go overboard and become some sort of activist that was pushing and trying and driving really hard and having some sort of anger or fear about anything. It had to be in this beautiful in-between place. So, yes, finding that true power that we have. And I do a lot of energy work as a sound healer. My sound and hearing became very acute when I had my healing, and so I can hear and sense where there are blockages, not only in my own body, but in other people's bodies, if they are willing to be seen in that way. And most of the women that I'm working with discover that they are not holding or carrying a lot of energy in the lower chakras, in the sacral chakra and in the solar plexus in particular, where our true power lies and our intuition lies. We're giving so much away to others that we are not standing in our own power, and oftentimes we're even out of our own energy field and into others. So we're not even anchored or grounded. You hear a lot about the importance of grounding. Well, that certainly is something I can speak to. I wasn't at all grounded, and that's why nature called me so, because that helps anchor us in. But this is a power within us. It's not a power over. It's not powerlessness that we have played into. It's not playing small to get power. It is this true power that we possess. And generations and generations have, been kept from this. It's like this magical secret that's really no secret at all. But for some reason, we have been playing in this world that has been encouraging us to hide that away. And I think all of that is now changing. Isn't that exciting?
It is so exciting. And I think that there are, more and more women stepping up and using their voice, their experience, their stories to share and inspire and encourage each other. We're talking about the chakras and where we're, blockages and stuff like that. As much as I am a daughter of the earth and love Mother Nature, one of the cool things about technology is that we can work with people across the internet and have meetings and sessions, and you can do a lot of your work basically with people anywhere in the world.
Yes.
And
yes, and that is so amazing.
Isn't that so amazing? And you know, when we can see the person that's doing it, and with energy work in particular, which is something that I've been really exploring and fascinated with lately. It is people that are gifted in with energy work. You don't have to be physically in the presence. It's able to be picked up and worked. And you offer something really wonderful, along with a lot of, of course, your workshops and programs. You have something called a Sacred Heart Voice chakra reading. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. This is something that I do. You can live anywhere in the world as long as you have the internet connection. We meet by Zoom, and we can see one another. And I am offering anyone who's hearing this a complimentary 20-minute session with me where I can tap in with your permission and read your energy chakras to determine where you might be blocking your divine creative expression, your naturalness, whether it's in your voice or in your solar plexus or wherever. I hear tones and can sense where there are blockages, and it's beautiful information that can be helpful. There are sometimes chants and tones that I hear, and messages that come in, and it's often very insightful to someone. And so I'm offering that, like I say, and it is beautiful. My intent with all of the healing work that I do, Sandra, is to help others learn how they can tap into their own body's wisdom and discern for themselves and learn, as I did, how they can read the messages of their own body and learn how to follow their body's wisdom, because the body never lies. It really never lies. You know this.
Absolutely.
So I love working, and it's so fun. People from everywhere in the world, women I'm working with. I do work with men occasionally as well who are open to this. And it's like this is a universal thing. This is not just something we're experiencing in America as far as giving ourselves away and doing too much for others and not balancing. It really is a universal thing.
It is a universal thing. And I have an interest in energy healing and all of that stuff, but I wasn't really specifically familiar with what would a heart voice chakra reading. And Pamela was gracious enough to allow me to have a session before doing this interview. And let me tell you, it was eye-opening. It was beautiful. It gave me some very personal insights, which I'm not going to share here on the air, but
Sure.
It was something that is really, it was so grounding. And you talk about different things, and just the fascinating of how you're able to hear the different sounds and the tones. And so, if you're someone who, now, it's not only for women entrepreneurs, but there's so much growth and movement happening with women stepping up and taking on an entrepreneurial role. And many of us find that we stumble along the way, or that we have some fear, or we have some blockages and basically stuck points. And exploring and doing something like having a Sacred Heart Voice chakra reading can really be a little bit of provide some insight for people.
Yes, and I think for me, you remember when I first got ill, here I was a farm woman, for goodness sake. I was very alone in that. I couldn't tell anybody, I was being guided by angels or whatever in all this poetry I was writing. It was just a way that worked for me. But you know what? I never felt alone after that. And it took so much of the fear out of it. It went, I'm following a little different path here, but it felt so strangely familiar. I think we have that, and we're so tapped into it, I think, when we're little children. And the veils just get more clouded and shrouded, and we move away from that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's our own intuition that we're waking up to. And when we realize that we have that in our hip pocket, and then when you couple that with learning how to read your own body signals as to when you're denying it, then you have like this built-in business staff that can guide you and help you along your way as a pioneer in the world of business.
And how exciting when sort of collectively, globally, there's so many more people paying attention and tuning in to this stuff, and instead of just being like a consumer of stuff from the outside, we're turning inward and asking our own questions and listening to, like you say, our intuition and our guidance. And it is, it's pretty fantastic. And for me, pairing that with nature really amps it up.
Yeah. And the other thing you and I tapped on, and I didn't set out to work with primarily women who tend to be more introverted by nature, but it's how it's working. And it's so fascinating because oftentimes we're the ones that, we resist. We weren't the ones who did the book clubs or joined sororities. We tend to be a bit more of the watchers of the world and love our solitude, and in most cases feel fairly confident in our own skin. But what this is helping me do so much, and again, the internet is such a beautiful tool for that, is recognizing the power of connection and the power of voicing when we are stuck and when we do have fears, and recognizing that we are so much more alike than different. And that has just been a happy surprise for me. And it's also a very, very big part of healing. So in addition to 90-day private mentoring programs that I do, helping individuals unlock their sacred heart voices, I'm getting ready to do a group program that's going to be fascinating because we will be working with group energy, and that is a whole other level of what can happen when we are all joined and connected and moving toward common goals.
Oh, that sounds really exciting. I'll have to stay tuned, keep my eyes open for that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pamela, we are going to provide people the links to be able to take you up on your gracious gift of the free 20-minute Sacred Heart Voice chakra reading. But before we close off, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners, or just anything on your heart that you'd like to talk about?
I think maybe it's because I'm a grandmother now. I have 4 grandchildren, and my parents are in their 90s, and they are preparing to pass. But I think one of the things that's helped me more than anything, and I do this even in some of my workshops, and this might be something that you would like to do as a listener, is to just this day take time to reconnect with the natural world. I bet almost everyone here has fond memories of when they were a child, and think about where you played when you were a child. The whole reason I went off to live in a treehouse was because I had one as a kid. And it was my sacred place where I would just go and I felt safe and loved. And so if you can find that place, space, that memory, it lives within you on a cellular level. And if you can begin to nurture the feeling that you get when you re-tap into that, and nurture that each day, that feeling, magic starts to happen in your life. It shifts the energies from worry and angst and fear into this all's right with the world feeling. And you really start to walk and make decisions in very different ways. So that's a way that each of us can tap into that. And you might even want to journal it. But almost everyone I've met, this is a doorway in. It's a doorway in.
Yeah.
And it might be life-changing for you and certainly helps your health, whether you're suffering from a chronic illness or not.
That's right. And, it is such a beautiful thing. I mean, it takes me right back when you say that. Think about where I was, what it felt like to be playing outdoors as a child in just with pure joy.
Right.
And it's the feelings, tapping into those feelings. And it's,
Right.
when we tap into stuff like that, our brains are smart. It sort of reconnects, and it helps us to have them more readily accessible when we need to draw on them.
Yes. Absolutely.
Such a beautiful way to end. I absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Pamela, for joining us.
Thank you, Sandra.
This has
been a pleasure to meet you.
It's been wonderful, and I wouldn't be surprised if we end up doing something like this again, or if I bring you on to my podcast down the road. Again, everyone, Pamela is offering up a absolutely free 20-minute Sacred Heart Voice chakra reading, and there is a link for that I will be placing both on my Facebook page, the Chronic Wellness Tips, as well as on the CHLY Wellness Wednesdays page. Again, thank you so much for Pamela for joining me today, and we will be right back. So right now we are going to do a bit of a switch gears here, and I'm so excited to talk to you about a new service that is coming to our community that we really, really need and can benefit from. We are going to be talking about how seeing the challenges in the current state of home care services has inspired and compelled my next guest to want to do something about it. Joining me now in studio is Christy Willoughan, owner of Integral Nursing here in Nanaimo. Christy is a registered nurse who has a vision of increasing basically the customer experience for those needing home care by connecting them to programs, resources, and community, and bringing back the arts and the personal touch to nursing, which sounds pretty fantastic to me. Welcome, Christy. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Chronic Wellness.
Hi, Sandra. Thank you for having me today. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. And, it's really nice to come in and to do these interviews and have a chance to chat. And I've had so much fun getting to know you over the last little while. So I think it's pretty cool. So I'd like to tell people just a little bit about your background. You started your experience in traditional healthcare roles being a paramedic for many years, I understand, and then as a registered nurse since 2010. And while we're not going to get into really the challenges within the current healthcare system and providing much needed home support, we are going to explore how seeing those challenges inspired and compelled you to want to do something about it.
Yeah, there's so much we can do. And
hang on a second, I'm not having a lot of mic here on you. Let's try.
Can you hear me now?
I sure can hear you now. Sorry about that. You are loud and clear.
Wonderful. Yeah, there's lots that people can do to empower themselves to continue to get the care that they need. And there's some times where they don't know what to do, so that's where I'll come in and help guide them and introduce them also to some of the arts and things they can do to be more proactive in their health. I'm very passionate about helping wellness before we go into symptom management.
Absolutely, yeah. And wellness, seeing like the whole person. I know you and I have talked about how very connected to the mind, body, spirit, and it's not just treating the symptoms; it's treating the individual as a whole.
Yeah, the whole person treatment is so important. There's the medical side. There's learning to deal with your emotions around what's going on with you, and there's just so much.
There's so much. So let's talk for a minute, a little bit, just to expand and the discussion about home care, because it goes beyond our geriatric community. While there certainly is a need for that in the senior population, who else at times may be in need of home care?
Well, in my personal experience, I had a back injury and I needed a lot of time to rest. And I wasn't aware at the time that I had nursing services available on my extended healthcare plan.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been so helpful. So there's people that are going through surgeries, all sorts of
things. I know myself, I'm putting it off, and I've talked about it before, but I am scheduled, I'm eligible for a total knee replacement.
Yeah.
And, you just think about that, like, how am I going to manage? And here's one of the things that I really wanted to touch on, where I feel that home care services are so important. Family, if they're available, first of all, they're not always available, and they can be really great, but sometimes there's some of the things that are it's just not a good fit for parents and children, and everyone, the whole family is not always have that comfortable level for more of, like, think about just basics of bathing.
Yeah, that's can be quite awkward for some family members, and it's tough for the family members to think about all the logistics and planning that goes into caring for someone, and then the family is also quite busy in their own lives, so that can be really stressful with all the unknowns that can come up.
Yeah, for sure. I think that I think that having people, you mentioned that when you had your injury, you didn't really recognize at the time that you actually had coverage. And so here's the thing: anybody who has an extended healthcare coverage, take a look at that every once in a while, because you may have looked at it before and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I don't need nursing, I don't need any canes or mobility. But then what if something happens? And if you look in, what if you have coverage?
That would be so amazing, because having support is one of the determinants of health, according to the World Health Organization. Mm-hmm. And we're having a sense of support and community is one of the main things of having a healthy life. We don't have to do this all alone. And what I can offer is to find out what you need, and then bring all those supports in, or make you aware of how you can make your transition back to wellness more gentle.
Absolutely. And having the support systems in place, I also feel it helps with the healing process. It helps with everything. And okay, so let's talk about even like at the beginning. So your role is sort of to advocate for the individual that has needs, and to be to provide guidance and resources to let them know what's available, find out what might be suitable for them, and to help pull that together. Is that sort of what your area is?
Because we have actually a lot of wonderful supports in our community, but we're not, if you're not aware of them, how are we supposed to access them?
For sure.
The healthcare system is doing everything they can, and I'm just here to kind of build the bridge to make it that even stronger. And there might be a service you're not aware of that I can bring in, or I can be that person that will help you talk to the public system, because I have worked in the public system myself, and just to know what questions to ask, how to put your care together.
That's something that is actually pretty critical, and it's one of the weird and quirky skill sets that I've tended to develop over the years, of being able to work and navigate into that medical system, and sort of be initially my own advocate, but now doing so for others and my elderly parents as well. And it's not always easy to know how to get in front of the right people, how to know exactly what to ask. I think having someone with your background that knows and understands the system can be so beneficial, because you understand the processes that are in place. You understand that these agencies and resources have their protocols that they need to work with. And being the person that has the needs, they may not always necessarily know how to get from A to B to C, or how to properly escalate when needed, whereas someone like you is masterful in that area.
Yeah, I'm a skilled empath, so I look at people and I know what they need and when they might need it. And then, having my own experience when you're going through something like that, and this can be so much stress and tension, they don't actually know what you need. I didn't know what I needed at the time until I started asking for help. So being a registered nurse, I can tell, what might be needed now, what's needed in the future, and even extend that into the healing arts as well.
Yeah. And so taking taking a look, like you've talked about, when you go and see your clients, you can sort of take an overview and do some sort of creative brainstorming, sort of thinking, looking for solutions that they may not have readily thought of. Because again, when an injury happens, it's something new. We don't live like that every day. But someone who comes from a healthcare background is familiar with the steps. They know what you're going through now, and they probably have insight of what you're going to be going through next.
Yeah, for sure. There's so much to it. And one of the things that I feel strongly about is building that relationship and building trust. Yes. And then making all those connections in the community. The more connections we have, the healthier we'll be. We're not meant to go through all of this alone. And, as humans, we're social creatures. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm bringing in, is seeing what connections are missing and how we can build them. Either if I provide the service, or if I can find someone else that can do it better, or just connecting into the public service as best as possible.
I think I know from being on the receiving end of services from the public system, some of the frustrations that I know that my parents had with that was the inability to plan their lives, because they're very, they go by schedule and routine, which there's nothing wrong with that. But you're up at a certain time, and breakfast is this time, and all that. And when you're waiting for personal care services and you have no idea when they're going to come or who it's going to be, it was one of the most challenging things.
That certainly can be really frustrating, and I know we're all doing the best we can. Even I still work in the hospital, and I do the best I can. And I've heard some feedback from the community about what you're saying, where the clients, they value their consistency in their care, and they like having the familiarity of the consistent caregivers coming to their homes. They like to know when someone's coming, and, feeling like their needs are important and that they're seen and heard is also important. And then establishing those connections in a vulnerable time is one of the aspects that creates healing in a quicker sense.
And for the patient, I mean, that sounds like so helpful and nurturing, but also for family members to know that their loved one is, like you said, being seen, being listened to, and helped in a meaningful way. And when there's some consistency with that, whether or not it's yourself or providing some consistency with care, or pointing to availability of resources and helping coordinate them, it takes a lot of stress away from either the individual or their family members.
Yeah, there's who do you call when you need something? There's so many, in the public health system, you try to talk to this person, and then it's hard to get a hold of them. So I'm kind of at the intermediary to help them work with the public system if they wish, where I'll make those phone calls for them, and I'll do my best to create all that consistency as possible. So I just see what I'm doing as an added benefit on both sides, for the public system and for my clients.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's really, really exciting. What would you like our listeners to know? How should they contact you if they're interested in finding out more or connecting with you?
I have a Facebook page right now. It's Integral Nursing, or you can give me a call at 250-755-6079. I'd be happy to learn about your needs and how I can be of assistance for that.
Excellent. And I would, I would highly recommend reaching out to Christy. She's a very caring individual and has such a calm, open energy about her. It is, I'd encourage you to do that. Christy, give us your phone number one more time, please.
250-755-6079.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and that has been absolutely fabulous. It's been a real delight. And what I would like to do now is to just wrap up here and find my place here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share 2 essential oils with you, and I've chosen 2 oils that really resonate with me for today's topics and for my guests. And so I had a lot of fun picking these. And so the first oil that I'm going to talk about is ylang ylang. And Pamela reminded us how it's important to remember the joy we had as a child playing outside and connecting with nature. Well, ylang ylang is a great oil for that because it supports our heart, allows us to tap into our inner child, and encourages us to be playful. Ylang ylang also brings forth joyfulness, and restores our faith in people, including ourselves. So that one's for a little bit of play and whimsy. The next oil is Siberian fir. And Christy was sharing with us how she's providing a bridge in the community in the area of resources and support. Well, Siberian fir is known to be helpful when navigating through hurdles. It supports mature thinking and allows perspective to come in. Siberian fir also helps to shift energy from loss and to look at what is good. So it struck me that feelings of loss can be common when one is faced with changes with their health or their mobility. So Siberian fir would be a good way for that, just to work through changes and to have a real support when navigating through things. So together, these 2 I feel are a perfect combination to nurture our inner child with a sense of play, while also applying some perspective and grounding. I'd like to give out a shout out to the amazing Elena Brower for her teachings and wisdom on how these oils support our emotions. Elena did a series of videos on some of the more obscure oils used for emotional wellness, and it's something that I have learned so much from and do continue to reference on an ongoing basis. I would just like to thank you again for joining me here today. I've had such a great time. And the hour, it always goes by really, really fast. And if you would like to have any more information about anything you've heard about today from myself or Pamela or Christy, I've got all the links posted on my Facebook page right now. That's over at Chronic Wellness Tips over on Facebook, and you will see everyone's contact information and all that sort of good stuff. So I will be back next month on Wednesday, July the 10th, with a really fun and informative hour planned for you. We are going to be talking about why so many health issues are benefiting from being in ketosis and how to successfully navigate a keto lifestyle. I'm going to have a really fun and vibrant guest joining me, and it's going to be a lot of fun to do that. So in the meantime, if you're curious, if you have any sort of health condition, look it up on the old standard Google. Write your condition in there and type ketosis and see what you can learn. Again, thank you so much to my guests. Thank you for listening. It is always my pleasure. I will see you next time. And in the meantime, may we all be chronically well.